Hello, hi. Um, Thank you for attending another class with me. My name is Jack. I work in the Office of Outreach for the College of Computing. Um, Hopefully my mic is picking up. Today is Friday, February 5th, and we're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes. This class is going to be pretty similar to last week's class. I didn't make a recording last week on accident, so we're going to keep it a little similar. I did take some time and rework some stuff I didn't like, and we'll see how it goes this time. As always, please feel free to leave your feedback either in the Instagram live feed, by sending this account a DM, in which case I'll get to it as soon as I see it, or leave a comment on the YouTube channel. We'll give it just a couple minutes. We'll start promptly at 5, given our timeout time for Instagram live sessions, and we'll get started here in just a minute. While we're waiting, to give our friends a chance to make it here, we can start some breathing techniques. We are going to do another earth salutation, so staying low to the ground again this week. And we're going to move pretty quickly onto all fours. So we'll start in a lotus, and we will just focus on our breathing techniques, breathing in deeply through the diaphragm, not stopping at the chest. Seeing as it's now 5, we're going to go ahead and get started. We'll focus on this breathing here just for a second. As always, breathing is the single most important function we can be doing, that we have control over, in my opinion. I think it's something that's commonly overlooked. And as we push through this practice, let's try to keep our yoga breathing strong, intentional, focused, and full of purpose throughout this session. As we're flowing through this practice, and we might find our breathing becomes autonomous, let's try to take a second and find that breath again. Once we're ready, we're going to go ahead and move on to all fours, coming into a child's pose. So kind of sitting on the tops of our feet, we're going to come forward and come down onto our waist here, our arms extended out in front of us, allowing ourselves to find our initial resting position, our place of peace for this practice. We're going to go ahead and start here. Now, if I move around when we're sitting into a pose, please don't feel compelled to follow me. I'm always going to trigger our next movements with audio cues. I'm going to speak with everybody. I will shift around periodically to help with camera angles and making it a little bit easier to see what's going on, so please ignore that as we move through this practice. When we're ready, we'll lift up into a tabletop position, finding our stability, where our wrists are in line with our shoulders, our knees right there with our hips. And we'll flexate through a couple of cat-cows first. So we inhale, our gaze goes up, our back arches inward. As we exhale, we come into our cat, tucking our pelvic floor into our stomach. Going through one more cow and one more cat. returning to that neutral tabletop and then pressing up to take a camel, a slight back bend. So we're standing here on our knees, our back is nice and straight. We'll make fists with our hands, maybe tucking our thumbs in, place them just in the lower part of our back here, and extend out backwards as much as comfortable, trusting our own bodies and knowing where our limits lie today. On that next exhale, slowly coming out, placing those hands back out in front of us. We'll come up into a downward facing dog, our first downward facing dog of today. Our head presses in between our biceps, our heels reaching down towards the ground. So our body's kind of forming a triangle. And we're going to hold here just for a second, maybe rotating our heels down one at a time. So kind of bicycle pedaling, reaching our right heel down, and then lifting and pressing our left heel down. Doing maybe 7 or 8 on each side. When we hit that balance, we'll come back, shift our weight forward, coming into our plank of choice. We can be in high plank, or we can be in low plank. It's not particularly important which plank we're in. Rotate our elbows in. We'll chaturanga to come down and inhale into our upward facing dog, pulling our shoulders away from our ears and trying to drive our pelvic floor again into the earth. From here, we'll press back into our child's pose and take a little stretch here just for a moment. From here, we'll lift back into our tabletop and then into our downward facing dog. We'll lift our left leg up nice and high and shift and step it through, pulling it close between our hands as possible and pressing up for a high lunge. We'll lift our arms out up above us. And we'll drop those arms down to the inside of our left leg. We'll release our right leg down onto the ground and release our top of the foot into the earth as well. And we'll try and attempt and bring ourselves down to our forearms if that's in our range of mobility today. And we'll hold here for just a minute. Maybe trying to straighten our back out. I notice mine is curving just a little bit. Lifting out. There, reframing our left foot, tucking our right toes back under and extending our knee, shooting that left leg back to meet the right. We'll drop our knees down and come back into our child's pose. That was our first little earth salutation. We're going to do one more on our right side to help us warm up. So whenever we're ready, we'll lift up, coming back into our tabletop position and take a couple of those cat-cows, making sure that when we start in our tabletop, our wrists are in line with our shoulders, our knees with our hips. We can adjust as needed. Inhaling into our cow. Exhaling to that cat. Back and forth, doing maybe 4 of each. Once we've done 4 of each, return to that tabletop neutral position and lift up to go into our camel, remembering our body is super straight from the knees to our heads here. Make some fists with our hands right in the small of the back. And we'll make our curvature outward. Slowly coming back in. Our hands come back down for a tabletop. We tuck our toes under, our hips lift, and we adjust into our downward facing dog. We again can pedal the heels out just a little bit here, getting ourselves nice and warm in the calves, making sure all of our bodies are getting a little bit of love as we flow through our Earth Salutation. Once we've done a symmetrical amount of pedals on our left and right sides, we'll stop that motion, shift our weight forward, either being in high or low plank. We rotate our elbows inward, we chaturanga, and press up into our upward facing dog. Remembering to keep our shoulders pressed down away from our ears, while we also can try to push our pelvic floor into the ground as well. When we're ready, we'll press back into a child's pose. Taking a quick little rest here before doing that right side lunge. And then we'll move into our bulk flow for the day. Remembering to keep that yoga breath, that steady pace. Knowing at any time we can get some water. And if we don't particularly like a move or the way something feels, we can always return to child's pose, which is where we are now at any time, and just take a quick little rest. When we're ready, we'll lift up back into our tabletop position. Tuck our toes under, lift our hips. We're going to bring our right leg up this time, so lift that right leg up as high as we can, and we'll shift and step it through. And press up off our hands for another high lunge. Really trying to straighten that back leg, maybe not all the way, a slight bend is all right. Activating our quadricep muscles on the front side of our leg, keeping our whole lower chain active. On the next exhale, we'll bring our hands down to the inside of our right leg. We'll drop that left knee down, release our toes, and we can try to come down to our forearms. If we decided to stay up on our palms or if we're down on our forearms, we're going to hold here for one more inhale and exhale. On that next exhale, we'll lift up and reframe that right leg. We'll tuck our left toes back under, extend that left leg. Put some weight in our hands here and push our right leg back to come into our downward facing dog, where we will drop and shift and come into that child's pose. Breathe here for just a second. Maybe sitting a little bit deeper, pushing our glutes closer to the ground. Maybe extending a little further with our arms this time. As we move into our bulk flow. When we're ready, we'll sit up back on our legs here and bring our legs out back into our lotus, where we're going to start for just a second and refocus our breathing, make it a little bit intentional, and start to warm up our hips a little bit as well. We find our peace in our lotus. Imagine as if a little string was lifting up on our head to keep us nice and tall. And we focus on our breathing here just for a second. Those deep inhales and exhales. Now we're going to start to make some movements to start warming up our hips. So we're going to move in one direction, rotating, trying to keep our glutes down on the ground. And then we're going to do the opposite direction. So for myself, I am moving counterclockwise. And I'm going to try to do about 4 or 5 in this direction, and then 4 or 5 in the clockwise direction. All while trying to keep my glutes and knees pressed down into the ground. They're going to want to lift up depending on how wide our circle goes. We really want to try to keep that floor down. That's where our work is being done. I think I did a bonus one. That might have been 5. We'll stop and change directions. We might feel that in our obliques or our intercostal muscles along the side here. That's all right. They're just getting warm. Remembering to keep breathing. We rotate through this motion. Slowly stopping that rotation, coming back in towards our center. We'll extend here into our staff position. I'm going to angle my feet off just a little bit so we don't get a full screen of my feet. I like to move a little bit of extra meat away from my glutes to allow myself to sit a little bit higher. That might be something that we like as well. And we're going to start by just rotating our ankles. So just making those same clockwise or counterclockwise movements from our ankles. Still sitting nice and tall. That same string is still pulling to keep our body straight here. We make 4 or 5 of those ankle rotations, and then we'll swap directions. For those of us who are just joining, please feel free to jump in at any time. And if you have any questions or want to leave any feedback, go ahead and write that in the chat, and I'll get to it as soon as I see it. Stopping that movement in the ankles, we're going to lift our right leg up first. So just kind of bringing it up to about hip level, and we're going to rotate at the knee this time. Just kind of getting that full rotation in. Maybe doing 4 or 5 and then swapping directions. Still trying to keep that back nice and straight. We're really trying to strengthen our mobility in our joints right now. I notice for myself at least, sitting all day long can make my legs just a little bit sore. They're not getting as much use as when I used to walk to campus. So this has been quite helpful. We'll drop our right leg. We'll bring our left leg up and do the same thing. 4 or 5 rotations in one direction, and then 4 or 5 rotations in the other. Our back stays straight, our breathing remains controlled. We'll drop that left leg down. We're going to bring that right leg up one more time, and we're going to grab our foot, kind of interlocking our toes behind it, and try to pull that leg as far back as possible, as if we're pulling a bow and arrow. We're like getting ready to launch it. We want to keep that lower part of the leg pretty lifted, about at eye level. We're going to hold here for 2 more breaths. And on that next exhale, we'll release and lower that right leg. Doing the same thing on the other side, we'll pick it up, interlock our fingers and pull it in. Maybe our hips open a little bit, that's okay. Mine do that. Pretty normal. Again, trying to keep our back straight, very tall. Just breathing. Slowly lower that left leg down. We're going to come back into a staff position, and we're going to tuck our right leg in towards our lotus position and leave that left leg extended out. We're going to take our left hand, come out towards that left leg, maybe going all the way to our ankle and beyond. We'll take our right hand, pull it over, and we'll reach out towards that left leg. I'm going to scoot back to give a little bit better view of what's going on here. Really opening up our right side along our lats, along our shoulders, along our intercostals, all through this region. Now we might find that we've kind of slouched forward and brought our right shoulder down. We want to really try to keep it open. And so our elbow on our right arm is facing the ceiling as we pull it through. And on that next exhale, we release and come back. And we swap legs. Our right leg comes in, our left leg goes out. Same thing, right hand goes out towards that ankle. Left arm comes up. We do the same thing. The same ideas apply, still breathing. Keeping that left shoulder up, our shoulders are stacked. One on top of the other. I notice myself slipping out of it just a little bit. Next exhale, we'll come on out of that one. And we'll extend both legs out in front of us here. Getting a nice wide straddled stance. And we're just going to try to come forward, bringing our torso towards the ground. We may notice there's not too much mobility in this region, and that's okay. We're really working our ligaments and our muscles along the inside of our thighs. Those are our abductors, which can get pretty tight. I myself have very tight abductors and can only get about this far. But it's not about how far you go, it's about feeling that active stretch. We just want to hold this here for a couple of breaths. Next exhale, we'll slowly come back in here, bringing both legs back to our center and coming back into our lotus. We're going to do a little bit of neck breathing here, or neck work, sorry. So we're going to start by just kind of making circular motions with our neck, much like our circular motion we did before, but now with our neck. So being very cautious, very tall bodies. We start to rotate our neck around. Maybe doing 3 or 4 of these in one direction. We might find that as we go in the other direction, that one way was a little bit more difficult, maybe slightly more painful than the other. And that's okay. We just got to remember that when it is painful, to trust our own body and know what kind of pain is okay and what kind is too much. So we switch directions now. For myself, that was 5. Maybe we had a different number. Once we do our symmetry number, we've done the same in a clockwise to counterclockwise rotation. We'll return to our center and do one more little neck stretch here. So sitting nice and tall, we're going to start with our left hand. We're going to stick that left arm behind us and use our right hand to pull on that left arm and tilt our head out towards that right side. So the arm being pulled away is open with the neck face, and we just sit nice and tall. We pull on that left arm as we let our head, just the weight of gravity pressing on it, and opening up that way. Slowly releasing. Same thing on the other side. Right arm from behind, left arm grasps. We open up that neck here. On that next exhale, we'll return back in towards our center. And we're going to move into Matsunyasana, which is Lord of the Fishes. A nice little hip opening pose here. So we're going to leave our right leg extended much like staff, as we were before. We're going to take our left leg and we're going to cross it over the right. We're going to take our right hand, place it on the outside of that knee. Take our left hand, stick it out behind us. We're going to leave our body nice and tall and take a rotation. We're going to feel this all along our midsection, probably in our glutes as well, depending on how tightly we pull on that left knee area. Knowing we're trying to be pulling at the thigh, we don't want to be pulling below the knee. We want to really lift that muscle up, really pull it, and activate our glutes. Feel that tension in there on our left side. Breathing steadily. Taking one more inhale and exhale. And on that exhale, returning back in towards our center. We're going to hold this right here for a second. We're going to lift that right leg. We're going to cradle our little baby here. So if our mobility is not allowing us to get that full grasp, we can just lift our leg just like this. It makes the same movement. However, if we have the ability to cradle our arm like this, we can do this as well. It is very easy to let the spine slouch. We still want to keep that spine super straight and tall here. So we kind of rotate back and forth. Maybe taking one more back and forth rotation. And releasing that left leg down. We're going to swap sides so that left leg comes down, the right leg comes across. Same idea as before. Left hand's going to pull in on the outside of our right thigh. Our right arm's going to come out behind us, and we're going to make that rotation. Again, this is our Lord of the Fishes, or our Matsunyasana. We're probably feeling it in our midsection as well as in our right glute this time. On our next exhale, slowly releasing. And we're going to cradle that right leg like a baby this time. So we're going to lift that right leg up. Now again, we can hold it just like this. Or we can cradle it all the way if our arms are lengthy enough like myself. We're just going to rotate back and forth. This is working a similar way to our bow and arrow type pose from before. However, this is a little bit more flexibility work as opposed to strength work in the forward and back direction. we're working a little bit more in the transverse plane, working on our rotations. Keeping that back nice and tall. I can tell when mine starts to slip a little bit and I have to catch myself. Maybe doing one more in and out with the leg baby. Slowly placing that right leg down to frame the, go right next to the left there. And we're going to take a nice staff and a forward fold. So sitting right here, nice and long, we're going to extend out towards our toes, reaching all the way, going out as far as we possibly can, knowing that we don't have to make it all the way to our ankles or past our feet. That's not about what this is. We just want to be extending and feeling that hamstring stretch. If we think we can go a little bit further, we can take a deep inhale. And as we exhale, we can reach a little bit further. And if that worked for you, we can continue to do that. And you can continue, we can all continue to do that over and over and allow us to get a little bit further each time. Slowly releasing, coming back into our staff position. We're going to bring our legs back into our center, sit in our lotus for just a second, and refocus our breathing in case we lost it. Now is an excellent time to grab a little water. And we'll focus on our breathing for just a second before we come back into our child's pose. As we breathe and think here, we can be assessing how we're feeling in this moment, how our body's feeling, how our mind's feeling. When we're ready, we're going to come back into our tabletop position, shifting our weight around just a little bit. And we're going to do a lateral leg lift. So once we're in that stable tabletop, our hips with our knees, our wrists with our shoulders here, we're going to start with that left leg and just bring that left leg out, trying to parallel it with our spine, kind of like a dog a little bit. We should feel this in our adductors, which are on the outside of our thigh. Also a little bit in our glutes. Slowly bringing that left leg down. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. That right leg comes up. We're doing the same thing as before, trying to parallel it to our back here. Maybe taking one or two more inhales and exhales. Slowly bringing that right leg down. Finding our stability, maybe taking a quick little child's pose. Getting comfy in our movements here. In just a second, we're going to move into our first mountain of the day. So the first time we'll be truly standing. When we're ready, we'll lift up, coming into a downward facing dog. And we're going to walk our feet towards our hands, just bringing them nice and close as we can get them. We can then walk our hands towards our feet a little bit. We'll be in a forward fold here, and we'll take a reverse swan dive, opening up into our mountain. Releasing in our center. Maybe shaking out our shoulders a little bit, shaking out our ankles and hips. And now we're going to take our Malavasana squat, which is going to really open up our glutes and lengthen our spines and be a real testament to kind of how our mobility is in our pelvic floor. So we'll take a stance, our toes pointed out just a little bit, right at about hip distance. We're going to inhale, arms go up, our hands come to our center as they come down, as well as our bodies into a squat all the way down. We press our triceps into our knees, and we keep our backs nice and long. We stay nice and tall sitting here, and we can think about if our heels are coming up, if we feel any weird tension in our knees. Do our triceps want to slip out of our grasp here, or are they comfortable? Where is our glutes? Are our glutes like between our heels? Are they pushing back out? We can kind of use these different cues to think about where some of our mobility might be lacking when we're moving throughout our days that might cause some of these abnormalities. When we're ready, we're slowly going to release out of that squat. Our hands are going to come out in front of us. We're going to start to shift our weight forward to allow us to come into a downward facing dog. And we're going to go through our left and right pigeons. So our left leg is going to shift up nice and high, and as we start to tuck it through, coming like we're going to go into a lunge, we're going to drop that heel, that knee towards our left elbow, our right heel towards our right arm, and we'll come down on top of that leg, shooting our right leg a little bit further back. We're going to drop down to our forearms. If possible, we can always stay on our palms as well. And we're going to really feel a deep stretch in our lower half. This is a preparatory pose if we're somebody who wants to try the splits. This is a great thing to help with our splits as well. If we notice we want to make it a little more challenging, we can start to bring that foot towards our elbow. I noticed that made it much more difficult for myself. We're still breathing, still using that yoga breath. On that next exhale, we'll press up back onto our palms. If we were on our forearms, we're going to tuck those toes on our right leg back into the ground, extend that right leg up, and use our hands to shift our left leg back. We're going to immediately go into our right pigeon, so our right leg comes up. We shift it through, much like before, right knee towards right elbow, right foot towards left elbow. We drop off of that left leg, and we can again come down to our forearms if our mobility is there today. And we just hold here for a moment. We can think about where our shoulders are and if our shoulders are sliding into our ears or not. We want to make sure they're nice and strong. On that next exhale, we'll press out of our pigeon, coming up onto our palms, tucking our left toes under, extending that left leg, and shooting our right leg back to meet the left. We're going to take one more chaturanga here, so we'll shift our weight forward, coming into our plank of choice. We can be in high plank or we can be in low plank. We rotate our elbows in, we press down all the way, and then lift up, pulling those shoulders away from our ears, trying to press our pelvis into the ground, really curving our spine, getting a nice bend there. And we press back, we can come into a child's pose. A child's pose is going to be great for this movement. We can relax right here. However, if we do want to give hero's pose a shot, we start in that child's pose position and just lift up. We might open our stance a little bit and bring our glutes all the way to the ground, if that mobility is in our range today. And we're going to hold either our hero's pose or our child's pose for just a couple of breaths. Whether we've been in child's or hero's pose, we're going to shift our weight up a little bit, come back into our lotus, and then into our staff. We're getting ready to come lie down onto our backs. We're not going to do so just yet. We're going to do one little core strength exercise before coming down onto our backs here. We're going to go into our boat. So in boat, we have a few options for movement. We can start in variation 1. We just bend our heels and we sit very tall right here, just like this. This is variation 1 for boat. This is feeling pretty good. We feel like we have good ab strength. We feel pretty strong throughout our core. We can lift up and bring those heels just off the ground and extend our arms out past them. This is still feeling pretty good. We want a little bit more of a challenge. We can start to straighten those legs. I notice I have a little bit of the shakes myself. It's all personal preference, and the tighter we bring those legs in, the more work it's going to be. We hold here for 3 more breaths, whichever variation of boat we're in. Slowly lowering that back down. And we're going to bring ourselves down to the ground as well. So from our staff position, we're just going to slowly bring ourselves down, using our abs to help us come down into the ground here. Very strong cores. And we're going to do just a little bit of work. I'm going to adjust a little bit to make sure I can still be seen pretty well. Hopefully, again, my headphones are picking up my voice pretty well, and that's not going to change as we come down to the ground. We're going to start by bringing that right leg in towards our center and just starting to pull it through. We've grasped just below the knee on top of the shin here, and we're pulling it as close through our body as possible. We're really trying to pull it in tight. Really tucking it in here. On that next exhale, we'll let that right leg come out. And then we inhale our left leg in. Same idea, we're really trying to pull it through our chest as if we're trying to force the splits. However, we do want to keep in mind how our body's feeling when we're really pulling and making sure we're not doing anything that might cause us some harm later on this evening. releasing, bringing that left leg out. And I'm going to shift here so that it'll be a little bit easier to see what's going to happen next. We're going to lift our legs like a tabletop. We're going to open our arms out to our sides, so my shoulders are here. I'm extending straight out. We should be doing the same thing as a group, as a nice loving community. And we're going to start swiveling our legs from one side to the other, going as far as makes sense. Trying to get just above the ground before we lift up and press back and go towards the other side. Maybe doing 4 of these on both our left and right. Breathing as we go through each one, making sure our breath doesn't get away from us. When we've done 4 or 5 on each side, we're just going to hug our legs in towards our center here. Really pulling up on them nice and tight. Trying to pull our tailbone off the ground. And we're going to go into a personal favorite yoga pose of mine. Happy Baby, otherwise known as Ananda Balasana. And we're going to lift our legs up just a little bit. We're going to take our peace fingers, our index and middles, and grab the inside of our big toes, then open our stance a little bit wider like a sumo squat, and kind of rock back and forth from left to right. Starting to relax our bodies, feeling good. Maybe taking 2 more rocks on our left and right sides. Then slowly coming back to center, bringing our legs together and releasing. Extending both legs out besides, straight down, sorry. Our arms come out beside us like a T shape. We're going to lift that right leg first and drop it over our left side. We can lift our hips up and get a nice strong rotation to really bring that right leg across our body. If we do bring it a little bit further, we want to keep in mind keeping our right shoulder down when we rotate our right leg across is super important. It's much more important than bringing that right knee down. As long as we keep that right shoulder glued to the ground, we can bring that right knee as far as it'll want to go. And we just breathe here. Our breathing is starting to slow down. Maybe not as often as we were before. Deeper and slower inhales and exhales. When we're ready, we'll lift that right leg back up, come in towards our center, exhale as it comes down, inhale as the left leg comes up, and we do the same thing. We're just dropping that left leg across this time. Same rule applies. We want to keep that left shoulder down before we let that right knee come down. Left knee, sorry. Our breathing really started to slow down here. Slowly coming in towards our center, unrotating and extending that left leg out to meet the right. Our hands will come back closer down by our sides, and we're just lying on our backs here. Our breathing really starts to slow down as we come into our Shavasana, our little reflection on the day of this practice. I am going to sit up if we're watching the screen. Please feel free to stay in Shavasana or join me in Lotus if that's what you prefer. This is purely a preference, whether we want to lie down or sit up as we close. It's all a matter of whatever feels good for us today. Whether we're lying down or sitting in Lotus, our breathing starts to really slow down. We might close off our airway from our nose that connects to our throat. Just mouth breathing. We may notice our tongue wants to float in the middle of our mouth. Our eyes close if they're not already closed. And we just take a few minutes to reflect on this practice, how it made us feel, how we were feeling beforehand, how we're feeling now. We reflect on our day and how our day was, not necessarily thinking of it in terms of a good day or a bad day, but more of, did we accomplish everything we wanted to? Did some things get left out? Did we have good things that happened today? Did we have not so good things that happened? Just taking a full reflection of our Fridays. Maybe now expanding that reflection a little bit further. We think about how we could have changed our days for the better, or maybe for the not better, allowing ourselves to reflect on some of the decisions we've made today. Knowing that whether the decisions we made resulted in a positive outcome or a negative outcome, it's all in the past now, and we can only look at the present. We need not speculate about the future. However, we can act in the moment to change what may happen next. Focusing on some of these thoughts and breathing here. As we continue to kind of meditate and find our peace, the service is going to kick me off here in just a second, so I'm going to have my closing remarks now, but please feel free to stay in Shavasana for as long as you like, even after this stream ends, until whenever we're comfortable moving on with our evening. So my final words, thank you so much for being here. It means a lot to have some people go through these practices with me. I've been teaching for a long time, and although we're not teaching in a face-to-face platform, I know that there are plenty of people that enjoy this series and enjoy these live streams. And so I'm going to continue to keep doing them. We're just trying to make sure, we at the Office of Outreach are just trying to make sure everybody's getting through this time. Thank you so much, Gabby. I really appreciate it. I really hope you have a great rest of your evening as well. And hopefully I'll see you again for the next one. We do these every Friday at 5 p.m. And if I'm smart about it, I upload them on the YouTube channel for COC Community, where they will exist until forever. If you have any feedback, again, please feel free to either drop it in this channel, things you want to see for next time, things you don't want to see next time, or just general questions about maybe yoga and mindfulness. That's going to be fine here. That's going to be fine on YouTube in the comments, and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. And I will see you next time. Namaste.